Welcome to Lord VARYS, a Game of Thrones story, written by Brian M. Brombaugh, read by Ned Rattor. There will be limited images in this story due to policies outside of my control. This keeps the story whole and not watered down. Please like and subscribe to help support me. Let's begin. Chapter 1, Chains and Cradles. Essos, the slave cities, 266 AC. He was born nameless, not because his parents lacked imagination, but because his mother bled out before she could speak a word, and his father, an overworked slave in the fish markets of Liz, had already sold the babe before she drew her last breath. A coin, a shrug, a swaddled infant handed off to a fat man with no teeth, and a cart full of orphans. That was the beginning. The cart clattered east, past olive groves and redstone villages, through Tyrosh and onward to Myr. Children slept in hay, cried from hunger, vanished in the night. Taken by wolves, men, or worse, he didn't cry, not once. Even then, VARYS knew what crying got you: nothing. No food, no water, no help, only a boot or a blade. By the time he could walk, he was already learning to watch. The way slavers smiled when the coin was good, the way they frowned when it wasn't, how some buyers liked strong backs, and others liked soft skin, and others didn't care at all. They gave him names like clothes, cheap, forgettable, and easily changed. Boy, rat, curly, pink thing, piss bucket. No one cared what he called himself, so he stopped trying. At age 6, he was bought by a spice merchant's wife in Pentos, her 5th attempt at a silk-skinned child for her sewing room. She liked to dress him in lace and powder his face, show him off to friends like a doll. When she grew bored, she tossed him to her guards, who weren't so delicate. That winter, she died choking on a pigeon bone. The guards blamed the boy. He escaped through a latrine pipe, ran naked through snow, slipped into a fishmonger's wagon, and didn't stop moving until Myr. By age 7, he'd been sold 13 times. He could speak 4 tongues fluently: High Valyrian, Lycene, Merish, and the secret gutter cant of slaves who had no country. He'd learned how to steal bread, distract a master, slip poison in wine without being seen. He could make himself invisible in any room, but even shadows are seen eventually. That's when he came. The man didn't have a name either. At least, not one anyone used. He had a robe of pale silk, a smile like knives, and eyes that never blinked. He spoke to Varys's master in whispers, handed over a purse heavier than any boy was worth. The master didn't even haggle, didn't ask why, just took the coin and waved goodbye. Varys was 8. The sorcerer's estate wasn't a home, it was a cage, no windows, no escape. Every wall was smooth and cold. There were no candles, only braziers, blue flames that never flickered. Varys was bathed, dressed in soft silks, and given a cup of wine. He drank. And that's when the pain began. He couldn't move, he couldn't scream, he couldn't beg. But he could feel every slice, every touch, every moment. He watched as the sorcerer whispered incantations over his genitals, laid them upon a bronze dish, and set them in the fire. The flames turned blue. Then a voice. Not the sorcerer's, not his own. Something ancient, inhuman, hungry. It answered back. Varys never forgot the sound of it. When the ritual ended, the sorcerer didn't look at him, didn't thank him, didn't kill him. He simply opened the door, dragged Varys's mutilated body into the street, and dropped him on the stones like rotten meat. He lay there all night, bleeding into the cracks. By morning the dogs were circling, but they didn't bite. He looked at them, and they walked away. He should have died, But he didn't. Not out of mercy, not out of luck. Because something inside him had already changed. Some tether had snapped. Some thread of self-pity, of fear, of shame. And in its place, resolve. He whispered it to himself between tremors and vomit and tears. I will live. I will not forget. I will grow so powerful he will hear my voice. And he will beg. Chapter 2, The Blue Flame. Mir, 274 AC. Pain doesn't fade. Not really. It just learns to sit quietly in the back of your skull, like a starving thing with sharp teeth. For VARYS, the agony of that night never stopped gnawing. The blade, the fire, the voice that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. He could still smell his own blood, still taste the ash that clung to the back of his throat. He was 8 years old and already ruined, but ruin makes room for reinvention. The alley behind the sorcerer's estate was a graveyard of forgotten things. Dead cats, rotten cabbage, one-eyed children who tried to trade screams for coin. VARYS crawled over them, past them, through the filth, the spit, the frozen muck of Mir's gutters. His body moved because it had to. Every muscle screamed, his robes were soaked red and brown. His legs shook, his vision swam, his mind clung to one thing. Don't die here. He stole a scarf from a blind beggar and used it to bind himself. He stole bread from a stall and vomited it up behind a butcher's tent. He found a cistern to drink from and stayed hidden there for 3 days. The wound did not kill him. The world tried, but the world underestimated VARYS. He started talking to himself, not out loud. That was dangerous. But inside, quietly, a new voice. Not the voice that came from the flame. He had locked that one in a box and buried it deep. No, this voice was his. Wiser, colder, smarter than the little boy who'd screamed but couldn't be heard. That voice began to teach him. Listen harder. Speak less. When they pity you, nod. When they trust you, watch. Every kindness is a transaction. Remember what they really want? He had no weapon, no strength, no family, no parts men valued. So he learned how to take what others never noticed. A coin purse here, a secret there, a whispered name repeated in sleep. He learned the names of local guards, learned which merchants had mistresses, which husbands beat their wives, which wives beat their husbands. He memorized the price of a child's tears and a captain's lies. He could be anything in a room, a shadow, a ghost, a cushion, a cupbearer, a child, never a threat, at least not yet. He began to study, not spells, not that filth. No, he studied how people used magic. He watched charlatans draw symbols in chalk to terrify drunks, watched a red priest chant flames into dancing shapes to dazzle merchants into giving more coin, saw a man pretend to raise the dead with sleight of hand and hidden bells. All fakes, all illusion, except the voice from the brazier. That had been real, and VARYS made a promise each night before sleep. If I hear that voice again, it will be from the other side of the fire. It was in a tavern on Widow's Walk, near the docks, where he met Illyrio Mopatis. VARYS had just cut the purse of a fat magistrate and replaced it with one full of pebbles. He was halfway to the exit when a large hand gripped his shoulder. "You're either very stupid," said the voice behind him, "or very good." VARYS didn't move. "I prefer to be underestimated." The man laughed, a real one, loud, warm, dangerous. Illyrio looked like a butcher but moved like a knight. He smelled like oranges and steel. He wore rings worth more than VARYS's life and drank wine like he owned the vineyard. "What's your name, boy?" VARYS lied. Tamaros. Good, Illyrio said. Lies are better than names. What do you want? Varys answered without thinking. To hear everything before anyone else. Illyrio grinned. Then stay close, little liar, and keep your fingers out of my purse. Illyrio taught him how to speak to men with swords. Varys taught Illyrio how to speak to men with secrets. Together they bled Mere dry. They started small, pickpockets, brothel runners, street informants, but Varys had a different idea. Children. Who noticed them? No one. They could slip into halls, eavesdrop in markets, sleep under beds, fetch notes, deliver lies. He called them his little birds. He fed them, clothed them, gave them sugar cubes and new names. They called him uncle. He told them stories at night about princes and dragons, and in return they told him who the real monsters were. Varys's name began to spread. Not his real name. No one knew that. But they spoke of the spider, a bald eunuch who knew who you'd bedded, what you'd stolen, and how much you feared being found out. He ruined merchants with a smile, exposed priests mid-sermon, got a nobleman exiled for sleeping with his own cousin and betting on slave fights. One day Illyrio said, "We're getting too big for this city." Varys replied, "Then let's aim for a kingdom." Chapter 3. Teeth and Talons. Essos, 275 to 279 AC. They called it the Kingdom of Dust. No throne, no crown, no laws, just whispers, and the spider who wove them. By age 12, Varys had become a myth in half of Mere and a ghost in the rest. He didn't walk the streets anymore, he moved through them like fog. Children followed him in silence, picking up what he dropped, a glance, a gesture, a name muttered in sleep. He didn't kill people, he made other people do that for him. A rival arose, Coven, a pit fighter turned gang lord who ran the harbour slums with muscle, knives and a taste for children. When two of Varys's birds vanished, little Bara and Ulo, both no older than 6, he knew exactly where they'd gone and what had been done to them. Illyrio said, "We can't go to war with the entire dockside. Not yet." Varys replied, "I'm not going to war. I'm going to tell a story." The next night, a rumour spread through Mere like wildfire in a whore's curtain. Coven had sold one of his own nephews to a slaver ship headed for Astapor. By morning, Coven's own lieutenants had torn him apart with their bare hands. Varys never lifted a finger. Illyrio began to dress like a prince. Varys dressed like nothing. Plain, soft, bald, silent, never flashy, never loud. Let Illyrio take the credit. Let him take the bribes, the gifts, the swords at his door. Varys preferred shadows and secrets. He didn't just want coin, he wanted useful debt, a magistrate caught cheating on his wife, a high-born daughter with a bastard child, a captain who smuggled corpses to necromancers. He didn't demand repayment, he simply waited, because leverage, once planted, grows like rot. The little birds multiplied. He taught them to read, just enough, taught them to write in cipher, to follow quietly, to remember faces, voices, smells, to smile, always, to vanish, quickly. He paid in sweets, in shoes, in protection from the monsters who used to use them. They weren't spies, they were his choir, they sang him the truth, and the truth is power. In Pentos, a captain of the guard tried to arrest Varys for suspicion of spellcraft. Varys smiled. He had 36 children wait outside the man's home, all silent, all staring. Then he whispered a single truth to the captain's wife, who, it turned out, didn't know her husband had a lover, or a second child, or a gambling debt large enough to buy a vineyard. By sundown, the charges vanished. By sunrise, the captain did too. One day, Illyrio caught VARYS sitting on a rooftop, staring at the sea. "You ever feel guilty?" Illyrio asked, sipping wine. VARYS didn't blink. "About what?" "Using children, killing with words, making men drown themselves in latrines." VARYS finally looked at him. If they feared the knife, they should have stayed out of the kitchen. That same year, Illyrio introduced VARYS to a new opportunity. A drunk Westerosi envoy, exiled, broke, and full of stories. He told tales of court scandals, brewing wars, mad kings, and dragons long dead but not forgotten. VARYS leaned forward. He had spent his whole life pulling strings, but now he saw a loom. VARYS sat alone, long after the envoy passed out, turning an old coin in his hand. It had the face of Aerys Targaryen, sharp-nosed, smirking. He threw it into the brazier. The flames danced blue again, but this time no voice answered. Only the crackle and the silence. VARYS smiled. "Good. You should be afraid of me too. 3 chapters in. If you like the story so far, please like and subscribe to help support me. And comment on what character you would like to see in the next story. Now we continue. Chapter 4, The Sellsword and the Spider. Essos, 279 to 281 AC, The Blade and the Web, Steel and Silk, Illyrio Mopatis and VARYS the Spider. They were opposites in every way, one brash and loud, the other soft and sly, but their partnership cut through Essos like a dagger dipped in honey. One fought in alleys, the other crept through corridors, and between them kingdoms whispered. Illyrio became a merchant prince by accident, or so he liked to say. In truth, he bullied, bribed, and blackmailed his way into power with all the grace of a dancing boar. He bought up failing spice houses, sabotaged rivals, and fed false trade routes to the triarchs of Volantis. Every time a competitor rose, VARYS found a secret. Illyrio found a sword. Their empire of crime turned legit. Wrapped in silks and scrolls, a whorehouse became a bank. A thieves' guild became a shipping company. They stopped stealing bread. They started owning the bakeries. VARYS owned nothing. No house, no gold rings, no lovers, no pets. He didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't sing. Except when he told stories to children in the slums of Myr, no one could understand him. Illyrio once asked, "What do you want, truly?" VARYS stirred his tea. "Control of what?" VARYS sipped. "The story. A Myrish noblewoman, Lady Dorina Velseth, caught wind of their little empire and tried to extort them. Threatened to expose VARYS as a eunuch sorcerer corrupting children for shadowy ends. Illyrio offered to gut her like a trout. VARYS said, "Let me." He had one of his birds deliver a letter to her husband. The next day, the husband leapt from his balcony into the sea, shouting, "She lied. The twins aren't mine." By week's end, Lady Dorina was begging to be smuggled to Karth. She was never seen again. Illyrio met a Bravosi arms dealer, Tommen Sithwater, who was importing rare steel to Westeros and smuggling out parchments filled with scandalous secrets. VARYS traded him a name, just one, a minor noble with a bastard in Liz and a mistress in the Sept, a name that meant nothing to anyone until that noble's father died 2 weeks later, and he inherited 10,000 swords. Westeros, Varys realized, was a field of dry grass. All it needed was a spark. Word reached them that King Aerys II was seeking a new spymaster. His current one had been flayed by the Mad King himself for knowing too much. Illyrio laughed. "You'll fit right in." Varys said nothing. He just packed a satchel, a robe, and a folded list of 27 names. Before he left, Illyrio and VARYS stood on a rooftop watching ships come and go. "You sure about this?" Illyrio asked. "No," VARYS replied, "but I've outgrown mere." Illyrio offered him a blade. VARYS waved it off. "Let the others have steel. I have something sharper." "What's that?" "Memory." He arrived at King's Landing wrapped in perfume and politeness. Bald, fat, smiling, the court laughed. The lords whispered, "A eunuch? From Essos? Dressed like a merchant's mistress?" They didn't see the blades hidden in his eyes. They didn't notice that within 3 weeks he knew the names of every squire who gambled, every septon who whored, and every knight who owed a debt. He didn't need a title, but he would earn one. Chapter 5. The Birds Take Flight. King's Landing, 281 to 282 AC. The capital smelled like piss and pine oil. Aerys's court reeked of worse: sweat, fear, and sycophants, too stupid to know the difference between favour and survival. VARYS had been in King's Landing less than a moon's turn before the rumours began. The fat eunuch hears everything. He doesn't blink when Aerys screams. He pisses roses and shits blackmail. He never denied any of them. He didn't need to. VARYS made no demands, no office, no coin, no keep. He brought something better. A sealed scroll containing a list of secret correspondences between 3 lords. 2 of them plotting against the crown, 1 caught bedding his brother's wife. He gave the scroll to Grand Maester Pycelle with a smile. "Just in case you thought me decorative." By nightfall he was named Master of Whisperers. By dawn the 3 lords were on their knees, 1 in the sept, 1 in the dungeons, and 1, quite literally, at the king's feet, begging to keep his manhood. Only 1 did. His workspace was below the Red Keep. Not a library, not a war room, a series of tunnels and crawl spaces retrofitted with listening slits and secret doors. The maesters called them architectural curiosities. The old builders had simply called them what they were: eyes. VARYS turned them into ears. He whispered through pipes, passed notes beneath trapdoors, left sweetmeats on window-sills where his little birds perched. And in return, secrets. He recruited orphans, bastards, crippled children, and whores' sons, taught them to read basic glyphs, gave them sweets for secrets, pennies for passwords. He taught them songs, melodies to help remember who to follow, who to fear, who was worth watching. They called him Lord Spider, but they also called him Father. Unlike Littlefinger, VARYS never demanded. He trained, he nurtured, he protected. "You are not tools," he told them. "You are mirrors. Reflect what they hide." The small council was in session. Pycelle rambled about grain. Tywin grumbled about honour. Rossart, the fire-obsessed pyromancer, tried to pitch wildfire production again. VARYS just listened, then dropped a single sentence. "Prince Rhaegar has taken Lyanna Stark from Winterfell." Quietly, without leave, silence, then chaos. No one asked how he knew. They all knew how he knew. That was the moment they stopped laughing at the eunuch. Aerys didn't trust his son, didn't trust his wife, didn't trust Tywin or the guards or his own shadow. He did trust VARYS, because VARYS always told him things no one else could, because VARYS always agreed with the king, until the moment the king forgot what had been said, because VARYS wore perfume and silks and never raised his voice, because he didn't look dangerous. That made him the most dangerous man in the room. Illyrio wrote from Pentos, "Are you truly loyal to this man?" VARYS burned the letter. Loyalty to him was not to the mad, nor to the noble, nor to the blood that spilled to paint banners. It was to the realm. The realm was people. People needed peace. Peace needed stability. Stability needed someone like him. If I must serve a monster to protect the children of cobblers, he told himself, then I'll serve him with a smile. Aerys once asked, "Why do I never hear them any more, Varys? The rats? The spies? They used to squeak so loudly." Varys smiled, bowed low. "Because, Your Grace, your walls no longer whisper. They sing." Chapter 6. Whispers in Fire. King's Landing, 282 AC. The Red Keep burned long before the torches were ever lit. Paranoia crept through its stone bones like wildfire, quiet, invisible, waiting for breath to turn to blaze. And at its centre sat a man who saw enemies in every shadow and betrayal in every smile. King Aerys II Targaryen, the Mad King, and beside him, always just behind the throne, padded in silk and scented like lilac and lemon, the spider, VARYS. It started with dreams, blue flame, the smell of copper and burned bone, the sound, impossibly clear, of that voice, the same one from the brazier, the one the sorcerer had called to, the one that answered. Except now, in his sleep, it whispered to him, "You still serve others, little worm. You still crawl, but you could rise." He woke in sweat. He never screamed. Screaming was for those with hope. Aerys had a new obsession, wildfire. Rosart, the head of the Alchemists' Guild, was his new pet. He promised the king that, with enough wildfire, he could remake the city in his image. Aerys began commissioning barrels by the hundreds. He stored them beneath the city, beneath the septs, beneath the dragon pit, beneath the Red Keep, and he whispered to Varys one night in a room full of shadows, "When they come for me, they'll burn, all of them. A second Valyria, fire and blood." Varys bowed and smiled, then excused himself, went straight to his chamber, and vomited. Varys sent messages to Illyrio, to Braavos, to the Citadel, to anyone with the power to intervene. He never signed them, never asked for help. He simply reported facts, hoping one of them would land in hands that could stop what was coming. No reply ever came. He was a spider in a web soaked in oil, and the match had already been struck. It came to him from a bird, a girl no older than 10, who had spied on a merchant in flea bottoms speaking Valyrian to a hooded man with a limp. She drew his face. Varys went pale. It was him, the sorcerer, older now, ragged but alive. He had fled Mere after a scandal involving child sacrifice and fire magic. He'd come to Westeros under a new name, Kalos of Lys, posing as a healer. Varys smiled. The web tightened. In the court his influence grew. He knew Rhaella had begged her son to take the throne. He knew Jaime Lannister was chosen for the Kingsguard as a trap. He knew Elia Martell had wept every night since her marriage. He knew Rhaegar was gone with Lyanna, and that war was coming. But the king didn't listen to Varys any more. He only listened to the fire, to Rosart, to the flames, to his own madness. Illyrio sent a single message: "You must choose, king or realm." Varys didn't reply. He began quietly mapping the wildfire caches. He took to visiting the dungeons beneath the Red Keep, made excuses about inspecting security, speaking with prisoners. He wasn't inspecting, he was measuring. If Aerys tried to burn the city, someone would need to stop him, and someone would need to know where not to step. Varys visited the sorcerer once before the end. He posed as a healer's assistant, slipped him a slow-acting toxin that dulled the limbs but not the mind. "Do you remember me?" he asked the man as he paralysed, eyes widening in horror. The sorcerer tried to scream. He couldn't. Varys leaned close, lips to ear. When you burned me, something spoke through the fire. A voice, the sorcerer's eyes pleaded. It still speaks to me, sometimes in dreams, sometimes when I'm alone. He smiled. But I don't need its power, because you gave me something better. He placed a single coin on the sorcerer's chest, one with Aerys's face. You gave me purpose. Then he left. The birds would handle the rest. It would take 4 days for the man to die. Chapter 7. The Mad King's Court. King's Landing, 282 to 283 AC. The crown was cracking, not the metal. It still shone bright atop Aerys's brittle head, but the power beneath it had begun to rot. The court no longer ruled Westeros. It watched, helpless, as the kingdoms turned their eyes north, to Winterfell, where Brandon Stark had just ridden south with fury in his voice and a noose already tightening. He came for his sister. He left in chains, and the realm would never be the same. Brandon Stark stormed into the Red Keep with fire in his blood and steel at his side. He demanded Rhaegar return Lyanna. Aerys smiled and ordered him arrested. Varys watched it unfold from the shadows of the throne room, his face blank, his fingers laced before him. Tywin was gone. Rhaegar had vanished. Pycelle hesitated, so Aerys turned to Varys. What should I do, eunuch? The boy threatens my blood. Varys bowed. He is the heir to Winterfell. Kill him, and the north will rise. Aerys laughed. Let them rise. We'll burn them too. And then he gave the order. Brandon was bound with a leather cord, a sword just out of reach. His father, Rickard Stark, was strung above him like meat over fire. Rescue your father, Aerys whispered. They called it justice. Varys called it what it was, the first death rattle of a dying dynasty. Afterward, Varys approached the king in private. My king, he said, this was not wise. Aerys turned, wild-eyed. They came to take my son's whore. They will come again. Let them. We'll burn them all. Varys tried once more. Your grace, peace is not surrender. Rhaegar must be brought back. The girl returned. Or this kingdom will fracture. Aerys stepped forward. You think I should cower like Tywin? Hide behind gold and treaties? I am Fire Spider. I am the dragon. Varys lowered his eyes. Then beware what dragons do when they burn their own nests. In the weeks that followed, the small council collapsed in whispers and half-truths. Pycelle urged diplomacy. Varys noted that he spoke louder now, bolder, likely convinced the eunuch was losing favour. Rossart spoke of flame as purification. Lord Chelstead resigned after learning Aerys planned to burn the city. He died the next day, roasted alive in his own chambers. Varys did not resign. He listened, he remembered, he mapped every spark the king lit, and in his mind he heard that blue flame laugh. Rickard and Brandon's deaths lit the match. Jon Arryn refused the king's order to send Eddard Stark and Robert Baratheon as hostages. Instead, he raised the banners. Storm's End followed. Then the Eyrie, then the North. War had come, and Varys, though still in court, began planning for a future where none of them would survive the present. Rhaegar returned at last, grim and changed. He said nothing of Lyanna. He said little at all, but he asked to see Varys. They met alone. I know my father is mad, the prince admitted. He is fire. Varys replied carefully, and fire forgets who it burns. Rhaegar nodded. When this war ends, the world must change. Varys said nothing, but for the first time he felt hope. It would be short-lived. As the armies clashed and the Mad King shrieked in his throne room, Varys kept feeding names to the shadows. He warned Aerys that Tywin Lannister was not to be trusted, that the lion did not come to the gates in friendship. Jaime agreed. The young knight came to Varys in secret. He'll sack the city. I know him, then stop him. I'm sworn to protect the king. Then decide, Varys said. Does that mean protecting him or the realm? Illyrio sent word from Pentos. Shall I begin planting seeds? A new dragon may rise from ashes. Varys burned the message. He still didn't know who would win the war, only who would survive it. 7 chapters in. Please share this story with someone you think would like it, and comment on what character you would like to see in the next story. Now we continue. Chapter 8. The Sacking of King's Landing. King's Landing, 283 AC. They called it a rescue, but it was a slaughter. The Lannister host, 50,000 strong, rode beneath banners of red and gold and promises of loyalty. They were welcomed with cheers, and gates swung wide, just as Grandmaster Pycelle advised. And just as Varys feared, he had warned the king. He had warned Jaime. He had even warned Tywin in a letter that was never read, never answered, never needed. The spider had spun his last warning. Now he watched the web burn. The first to die were the guards, then the bakers, then the whores, then the smiths, then the women who bore Targaryen children. No loose ends, Tywin Lannister had said. The Mountain and Sir Amory Lorch stormed the Red Keep with steel in hand and murder in their orders. Varys stayed hidden in the tunnels below. He did not pray. He did not run. He simply listened, and in every scream, every sob echoing through the stone, he heard the death of a dynasty. Aerys had ordered Rossart to ignite the wildfire. "Let them come," the king had said. "They will dance in green flame." Rossart, terrified but obedient, made for the cellars. He never got there. Jaime Lannister's blade caught him at the temple. Clean, quick. Then Jaime walked the halls of the Red Keep, alone, until he reached the throne room. Varys, hidden in the rafters, saw what no bard ever sang. The young lion, blood-stained and shaking, standing behind the iron throne. The king, raving and drooling, shrieking about betrayal and fire. And then, steel in spine, Jaime ran him through. First the back, then the throat. It wasn't honour, it was necessity. When the fighting ceased, the Red Keep smouldered. The bells rang, not in triumph, but as a funeral dirge. Varys stepped from the shadows to find Jaime sitting alone on the throne steps, blade across his knees. "I warned him," the Kingslayer said. "I tried." Varys sat beside him. "You saved the city," he said, "but now they'll curse your name." Jaime nodded. "Better mine than theirs." Neither of them spoke again. Tywin entered the city in a crimson tide. Gold cloaks bent the knee. Pycelle kissed his ring. Varys? He vanished, not in body. He simply made himself small. He told Lord Tywin that he had always served the realm, not the man. That he had warned Aerys against opening the gates, that he had mapped the wildfire, prevented its ignition, even whispered to Jaime when it mattered most. Tywin believed none of it, but he let Varys live. Why? Because unlike the dead, the spider still had uses. The Targaryens were gone. Rhaegar dead on the trident. Elia raped and murdered. Her children dashed against stone. Only Viserys and an infant Daenerys remained, spirited away into exile. Varys knew where. He told no one. Not yet. Not even Illyrio. Because a web must always be spun on fresh frames, and this one had only begun. Robert Baratheon entered the Red Keep, drunk on grief and crowned by victory. He hated courtiers, ignored laws, and spat on ceremony. but his hand, Jon Arryn, saw value in Varys. "You know where the bones are buried," Jon said. "And who did the burying?" Varys bowed low. "I dig graves very quietly, my lord. Robert didn't trust him, never would, but he kept him, because even kings need whispers." Chapter 9. The Spider's Web. King's Landing, 283 to 298 AC. The dragons were dead, the stag ruled, and the spider endured. Robert Baratheon took the Iron Throne drunk, bloody, and 10 years too young to wear a crown. He had no patience for politics, no stomach for whispers, and no trust for the eunuch with the soft voice and softer hands. "I don't like spies," Robert said. "Then you should be grateful I'm yours," Varys replied, and just like that he stayed. Jon Arryn was the true ruler, quiet, methodical, stubbornly honourable. He saw the court for what it was, fractured, teetering, already bleeding under the weight of Robert's appetites and the ambitions of men like Littlefinger. Varys and Jon never trusted each other, but they worked together. Varys fed him truths dipped in honey. Jon fed Varys stability. Together they held the realm in place. For a time, Petyr Baelish was everything Varys loathed, clever, cruel and loud. He rose through chaos, planned it even, using coin and carnality as weapons. Where Varys built webs, Baelish set fires, and the small council, they cheered both of them, one to handle the shadows, one to fund the lies. But only one of them ever asked, "What is best for the realm?" Varys watched Littlefinger with the patience of a man watching a rat chew through rope. He knew where that rope led. Robert spent coin like it grew from whores. Pycelle aged backward in loyalty, always crawling, always nodding. Renly smiled but planned. Stannis glared from Dragonstone, uninvited, and the crown drowned in debt. Varys noted it all. He sent birds to Essos, spoke with Illyrio in code, whispered names into ears that could not afford to forget them, and most importantly, he watched the last Targaryens grow, a boy playing king in exile, hot-blooded, impulsive. Varys sent agents to watch him, but never once reached out. He knew Viserys would self-destruct. The realm needed hope, not entitlement. Let him burn. The girl, though, she was different, quiet, curious, observant. She listened more than she spoke. She asked about the poor, the sick, the forgotten. Varys whispered to Illyrio, "She is the one. Not yet, but she will be." Illyrio replied with a single word, planted. It was not Varys's doing. But it was Varys who felt the tremor first. He smelled it in the way Maester Pycelle looked away, in the way Littlefinger smiled too quickly, in how Robert's grief lasted exactly 1 hour before he called for a drink. Jon Arryn had been the hand of the realm. Now he was ash and questions, and the realm was vulnerable. Ned Stark came south, a wolf among lions. Varys watched him arrive with pity. A man out of place, out of time, too honest for his own good. He warned Ned subtly, quietly, gently, but Stark didn't listen. They never did. Illyrio informed him Daenerys had been wed to Khal Drogo, 10,000 screamers, a Targaryen with an army. The game had changed. The realm didn't know it yet, but Varys did. And in the lowest level of the Red Keep, he stood alone in his chamber, holding a piece of parchment with her name on it. He lit a candle, watched the flame, and whispered, "Grow strong, child. I will see you home." Chapter 10. The Whisper That Screamed. King's Landing, 298 AC. They still laughed at him. The court, the lords, the knights, all behind cupped hands and crooked smiles. A fat eunuch, perfumed, obsequious, always watching, never acting. But they forgot one thing. The spider never roars. He waits, and then he strikes. He was old now, older than VARYS remembered, grey, sagging, limping, caged in a cell beneath the city no one knew existed. Carlos of Lys, once a mage of Myr, now a prisoner of Varys' choosing. He had been taken in the night. No witnesses, no record, just gone. For 3 years Varys kept him here, feeding him, speaking to him, breaking him in reverse, not through pain, but through boredom, silence, and subtle dread. And now the time had come. There were no blades, no hooks, no racks, no screams, just a table, a single candle, a vial of truth serum, a child's toy, a carved wooden lion, and a copy of the Aegon IV coin the sorcerer had thrown VARYS at age 8. He placed it on the table. "Do you remember this?" he asked. The sorcerer blinked. Gagged, shackled, VARYS removed the gag. "You burned my body," he said calmly, "but not my mind. That was your mistake." The sorcerer wheezed. "What do you want?" VARYS smiled. "I want the voice." He forced the sorcerer to drink. Not poison, clarity. A truth elixir from Karth. It made lies burn, made memory sting. Then he lit the brazier. Blue flames danced. "I was a boy," VARYS whispered. "You paralyzed me, cut me, threw me away." The sorcerer began to tremble. I heard the voice. In the flame it spoke, and it still does. The brazier flared. The voice returned. "Still crawling, little spider?" VARYS closed his eyes. "No, I'm standing now," and he shoved the sorcerer into the flame. That same night he attended a small council session. He laughed at one of Littlefinger's jokes, recommended a tax proposal, tasted Pycelle's new medicinal wine, smiled, bowed, played the fool, but inside he was clean, the last piece of his past, ash. He returned to his chambers and wrote a note. "To Illyrio, the time draws near, the girl grows stronger, the world forgets the sound of dragons. But I do not." 5th, he sat alone with the cup of warm milk, staring at the city. Children slept in gutters. Bakers wept over rising prices. Whores prayed to gods who never answered. And still the lords played games. He had no love for thrones, no loyalty to banners, no family, no name. But he had the realm, not its rulers, not its castles, not its crowns, the people. They suffered when kings failed. They died when lords warred, and someone had to remember them. He left the candle burning. In his chamber, in the cell, in the hearts of every little bird who knew the sound of his voice. He wasn't the strongest, he wasn't the loudest, he wasn't loved, but he would be remembered, not as a hero, as something worse, a spider, a schemer, a whisper that outlived the scream. The end, Lord VARYS, author's note. This one was a thrill. VARYS might not have swung a sword or claimed a crown, but his war was waged in secret, and no one waged it better. Writing this book has been one of my favourite explorations into the Game of Thrones universe, peeling back silk to reveal the steel beneath. Thank you for listening and watching. Please like, share and comment. And as always, please subscribe if you would like more stories.